You might have already seen the headlines that Huawei's US ban is going to cost them billions, that they've already had to cancel product launches, and that building a smartphone without the US is impossible. But Huawei's Mate 30 Pro will apparently be a massive step forward, and there is potentially light at the end of the tunnel. Let me explain where the worry is coming from. Huawei can't do business with US companies. And we've already talked about how this means they can't work with Google on the software front, but there's arguably an even bigger hurdle. Because of how complex these modern day phones are, they almost always use components from every part of the globe, the US being one of the main contributors. Let me give you an example. You might have heard of ARM, the UK-based semiconductor company responsible for the designs of pretty much every mobile chip out there, including Huawei's. What this company does is creates new chip designs and then just sells the licenses to use those designs. And you might have already heard, ARM is one of the many companies that has pulled out of working with Huawei. To which you might be thinking, why? ARM is a UK company and Huawei's ban is with the US, not the UK. But it turns out that some of the technology that ARM UK uses has originated from the US, and even that is enough to cause a problem. Now, I've already talked about how Huawei's Hongmeng operating system could potentially allow it to bypass not being able to work with Google. But the question here is, how on earth can it possibly get around all the rest of the companies it's been working with? Just bear in mind that it might not come to this. It's still possible that Huawei's ban could be retracted, or even that the US could add exceptions to it, but this is the current trajectory. So if we take a look inside Huawei's P30 Pro phone, there are a few core problem areas, components that would need to change should the ban continue. And this actually starts with the glass on the front. Corning, the company that makes Gorilla Glass, is American. Good start. Now, iFixit has actually taken a look inside the phone where a few more issues pop up. You've got a US-based storage module, and what could be particularly difficult to change, US-based radio chips, which the phone would need to get 3G or 4G signal around the world. Add to this that ARM has pulled out on the chip front, and it's not a pretty situation. But the fact that Huawei is such a broad, powerful company could just be their saving grace. If this had just happened to any old firm, they almost definitely would have been crippled, but Huawei specifically has a chance. You might have heard of HiSilicon. It is also a semiconductor company and is fully owned by Huawei. They make the Kirin chips that you see each year in Huawei phones, which are in part based on technologies from ARM, hence why that company has had to pull out. But in the same way that Huawei has been sort of in the background preparing to be able to work without Google, it also looks like they've been preparing to work without ARM. Over the last few years, these HiSilicon chips have slowly been using fewer and fewer technologies from ARM. And according to Bloomberg, their next Kirin 985 chip, which is what the Mate 30 Pro would be using, is not affected by the US ban. On top of this, even if it turns out that the chip is still somewhat based on ARM, they might still be okay. Because of how soon the chip is meant to be coming out, its design and licenses will almost definitely have been finalized before the ban came into place, and so it is likely that Huawei has already stockpiled them. It's more the future chips where Huawei might start to have a problem. Essentially, the company has got a year. They would have a year to redesign their Kirin chips so that they're not using ARM technology, all without losing compatibility with Android applications. It is by no means an easy task, but it's possible, especially when for Huawei the stakes are so high if they don't. And this is kind of the overarching message here. It is difficult, but it is possible, even when it comes to the US-based storage modules in the P30 Pro. We know that Huawei is already working on its own storage solutions. They've actually come out with their own brand of nano storage cards, and so creating internal flash storage for future phones is not out of the question. And let's not forget that on these upcoming Mate phones, there are many components that wouldn't need to change at all. Most of them, actually. The OLED panels on the front, the batteries, and Huawei's pride and joy, the camera systems that can practically see in the dark, wouldn't need to be altered at all from whatever the original plan for them was. I also wanted to add to this that this original plan seems very exciting. Pretty much everything we liked about the P30 Pro, plus more power and what is shaping up to be a super fluid 90Hz refresh rate. Add to this that according to leaker Ice Universe, the Mate will have a very fascinating design that goes beyond what any current renders have shown, and the current renders he's referring to are actually already a pretty big change for Huawei. Anyways, I'm personally still hoping that Huawei gets its license to use Google back. I don't think many consumers are really benefiting from this situation, at least not in the short term. But at the same time, it's kind of reassuring to know that even with everything stacked against them like this, Huawei still might be able to come through. I think that's really exciting. If you enjoyed this video, a sub would be massively appreciated. My name is Aaron, this is Mr. Who's the Boss, and I'll catch you in the next one.